Think we're good. Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, or good evening from wherever you are joining us today. We are really happy to have you with us today. So my name is Milani. I'm the CEO of Demix, and I'm really pleased to have the rest of the team here today. We have Ron Lear, who is the VP of the CMMI Institute. We have Pieter van Zyl, the director of Demix. We have Lindsay Marshall here, the account manager at ISACA, and Bianca Erasmus, who is the CMMI ATM and also project manager at Demix. So today's session is scheduled for about 60 minutes, but we're going to aim to keep the presentation around 40 minutes. So there's more than enough time for questions at the end. And we've also included one or two polls throughout the session to keep everyone engaged and to just hear from everyone directly. And as you've noticed, we've started recording as well, so we will distribute this afterwards. And then we know that some of you are very familiar with CMMI, while others may be hearing about it for the first time. So wherever you are on the spectrum, please don't hesitate to ask as many questions as you'd like. And please feel free to, I hope you all can see it, you're welcome to pop your questions into the Q&A. And Bianca, Lindsay, and myself will answer all the questions. And those that we can't answer will be directed to Ron and Pieter for the final Q&A at the end. So yes, we are very passionate and excited about this topic, and we really look forward to sharing it with all of you now. So yes, let's get started. Over to you, Pieter.
Great. Thank you, Milani. Welcome, everyone. My name is Pieter. Today, we're tackling a common challenge across organizations of all sizes, the strategy execution gap. And what this simply means is that organizations are often good and great at developing their strategic plans, but when it comes to executing those plans, they fail to deliver on the plan. And this is what's called the strategy execution gap. And it's the focus of this webinar, how CMMI can help us address that. I've spent most of my career in strategic planning roles. I'm the director of Demix, ServeZone, and Vrede. And I previously worked in a large financial institution in the strategic planning department and also in enterprise architecture. I'm also a CMMI lead appraiser and an instructor, and I'm actively involved in the US FDA's voluntary improvement program for medical device manufacturers. I'll be speaking about the strategy execution gap and how CMMI can help close that, and Ron will also take us then deeper into CMMI, the model, principles, capabilities, etc. We'll do a little bit of a scenario case study called the Andes Mining Copper Corporation, where we will just make things a little bit more practical, and we'll look at things like the SWOT analysis and the balance scorecard. Okay, Melanie, if you want to take it then to the poll for it.
Sure. So we have a poll here that I'll be sharing quickly. You can see that, right? So everyone will give about 45 seconds to a minute for everyone to just answer there.
So the idea here is just to get a sense of the audience, where you are in terms of understanding the issue, strategy execution, and then the knowledge in terms of CMMI.
About 60% there. We'll give it another 10 seconds. We'll be sharing the results soon. Good. Okay, so let's see. Okay, Pieter.
So we see that most people are aware that the strategy execution gap problem is there and it exists. And then most of the participants have got a very good, or just about, most of them have got a very good understanding of CMMI as well. So that's excellent. Okay, great. So in terms of the next point here, so if we talk strategy execution, like we say, this is plans are done and well done, but then organizations fail to execute it. So if we just look a little bit at research that highlights this problem, there was a study done in 2020 by Bridges Business Consulting. That's based on 20 years, so it's quite an extensive study. That the interesting thing that they showed was that 48% of organizations failed to achieve half of their strategic objectives. And if you take that threshold up to, say, 2/3 of the strategic objectives, then 85% of the organizations failed, which is quite high. And then we've got other studies like Harvard Business Review, McKinsey, Gartner, that's showing similar results, and also the Cascade report. It's putting at about 70% of organizations that are failing. There's two critical elements to this. The one critical element underlying, if you look at all of these case studies and the causal factors, is weakness in organizational capability to establish the capabilities required to cover the strategy execution gap, or the weakness in the actual process of creating those capabilities. The other one, which is also fundamentally important, is the leadership change. So that's all about change management. So in organizations, when you change the organization, you need leadership to drive this. And we're not specifically going to focus on that. We want to focus on the capability creation, but the leadership challenge, that's very important. And you're not going to affect change without the proper leadership as well. CMMI has proven itself to be a very, very capable model over the past to actually deliver on the strategy execution or the capability. And Ron will take us through later on the technical report where up to 91% of performance achievements are reached, where people set goals or organizations. And then if we look at the voluntary improvement program, which is supported by the FDA in the US, then you see that there's quite impressive results coming back. So the medical device manufacturers that's on this program, they've got a year-on-year reduction in product recalls, and obviously product recalls are quite impactful to them. Whereas the organizations not on it, you actually see an increase in product recalls for them. And then the net promoter score for organizations, the medical device manufacturers on the VIP program, is a +55, which is showing strong endorsements by the participants in that program. The key takeaway here is building capabilities through CMMI is a powerful way to close your strategy execution gap. So I just want to look at talk about some organizations and then explain how CMMI can potentially help in these. So here we're not going to do all of them in the interest of time. So we're just going to cover Coke and then Boeing. So what we see here is that Coke in the 1985s, they wanted to reformulate their win back the market share from Pepsi with a sweeter taste. And the execution gap here was they failed to anticipate emotional brand loyalty. And there was consumer backlash on this, and they forced them back to the original formula. So potentially capabilities here is understand customer needs. What's the customer need? In CMMI, there's a capability area, engineering and developing products that can help with that. There's decisions making with data. In CMMI, there's supporting the implementation capability that can support that. There's oversight and product strategy, sustaining habit and persistence are capability areas. These are capability areas within CMMI that can directly support this. And we can look at Nokia, a similar thing, WeWork's IPO, similar, Uber's issues that they had. And then if we look at the latest one, say Boeing's their Mars goals through the Space Launch System. So they had a strategic plan, beat SpaceX to Mars using the NASA Space Launch System, with Boeing as the lead contractor. And the execution gap here is there was delays, there was cost overruns, and there was poor supply coordination, which allowed the competitors, in particular SpaceX, to outpace them. So some of the potential missing capabilities here is system engineering and execution. Again, CMMI can support that through engineering and developing products capability. Supply coordination, as far as I understand, that's still a big problem for Boeing. They've done a lot of outsourcing. So selecting and managing supplies is a capability from CMMI that can support them. Cost and schedule control, planning and managing work is a capability. Organizational learning, improving performance, and other capabilities. So it gives you an idea in terms of how the CMMI capabilities can actually support these weaknesses. Now, granted, the strategy itself could have been flawed, but then the capability to detect and correct an inappropriate strategic goal was missing. And as David Kelly's mantra goes, fail fast to succeed sooner. Perhaps the capability then to spot it and then pivot early is what is lacking in those cases. So what we're suggesting to close the strategy execution gap, we propose a structured three-step process. So you plan your strategy, start by using what works. Okay, most organizations they can do this well. And you can also use tools like the SWOT and the balance scorecard and the business model canvas and Porter's value chain analysis. We're definitely not saying change that. So all of those tools, very helpful, and use them. But after you've completed your strategic plan, at that point, before you start with the attempt to execute, is inject the CMMI-based capability appraisal. So the step 2 is appraise the capabilities using CMMI. So like what I did in the previous slides, you map your CMMI capabilities to your strategic plan and key strategic capabilities that you need to deliver on that plan. And this part is where the scoping of the appraisal will happen. So you will work with the lead appraiser that will identify together with you what units, projects, departments, functions, processes need to be appraised and what is critical to deliver your strategy. The appraisal is then performed, and through that appraisal is identified strengths and improvement opportunities related to those strategic capabilities that you need to implement. The appraisal process itself is relatively a quick process. It will take about a month from start planning to finish, and the actual appraisal is about a week exercise, depending on your scope. It can be longer, or it can be a little bit slower. So the appraisal, so it can take about a month to a week to execute. Okay. Then if you finish the appraisal after you've got your improvements and your opportunities for improvements listed, the next step would be now to execute these improvements. This is where the heavy lifting will happen. This is really where you need a process for process improvement or process implementation. You need to set that up for your organization, and you need an organizational change management from leadership. They need to drive the actual change in the organization. Those two are critical steps to have in place. Okay, so the improvement opportunities are then taken and they are fed into the improvement plan, where you will basically improve your processes to be able to have the capability to execute on your strategy. We'll share a high-level process for improvement at the end. But so organizational change management, also an important item to have. Melanie, if you can take it through the poll then, thank you.
Sure. Okay, so this is a multiple choice one, so you can select all that apply. We'll give it another few seconds. Okay, let's see.
Okay, so most most participants have used SWOT, balance scorecard, business model canvas, and then some with Porter's value chain analysis, and then others. There's a lot of other new techniques as well. But yeah, so and that's great. So there's good understanding of the techniques. Thank you, Melanie. Just again, so these are tools that you use during your strategic planning process up front. Okay. Okay, so if we just run through them briefly, and then we'll look at, so how can CMMI support them? SWOT stands for strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. It's typically used after defining your vision or mission and before you finalize your strategic plan. So internally, if we look at internal, external, the strengths and weaknesses are focusing internally, and opportunity and threats are focusing externally. In a SWOT analysis, CMMI can support the strengths and weaknesses very effectively by because that's one of the main outputs of a CMMI appraisal. And then if we look at things like opportunities and threats, there are very strong capabilities within CMMI through managing business resilience that can help you support your opportunities and threats within the SWOT. On the balance scorecard side, developed by Kaplan and Norton, so it connects strategy to your measurable outcomes. It tracks performance across key dimensions: financial, customer, internal, process, learning, and growth. And then key performance indicators. That's a key output that you always see in the balance scorecards. And one of the CMMI practice capabilities is improving performance that supports the development of this. And in some of the appraisals that we do, we find you will see that the KPIs that are defined, and that sometimes there's too many, it's not focused. And CMMI can actually very much help to define appropriate KPIs. If we look at customer, ensuring quality, getting requirements, all of that there's capabilities in CMMI. The internal process, CMMI as a model supports internal process improvement and learning and growth. CMMI is also a continuous improvement model. So CMMI creates the capability for continuous improvement. So it beautifully supports the balance scorecard. If we look at the business model canvas, it divides the organization in 9 building blocks and showing value where value is created and delivered. And when you analyze the elements of the business model canvas, you'll find also strong alignment with CMMI capability areas and domains. Porter's value chain analysis, also popular and used a lot. It examines the activities that add or reduce value within the organization. It splits operations into what's primary operations and support activities, helping you identify opportunities for improvement there. Again, it's a process-based model, which makes it highly compatible with CMMI and CMMI-based appraisals, which is also focused on analyzing and enhancing organizational processes. So just to get a practical sense on this, the Andes Corporation. So what we've got the scenario study here where we say, okay, we've got the Andes Corporation and they've got these strategic goals. They want to increase profitability, which most organizations want to do, expand its market share and reach, and then optimize internal processes. The challenges the organization currently faces: high operating costs. They are experiencing water scarcity issues. the mining infrastructure is aging, and there's a potential political and regulatory risk that they have. So the case study there, you can go to the Demix website and then download the full case study there. We've covered all the different SWOT, balance scorecard, business model canvas, etc. in there for comprehensive analysis. But in the interest of time, we're just focusing on 2-year SWOT. So if we look at the SWOT for the Andes Corporation, under strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, threats, you would, in your real strategic planning, list many, but we're just putting a few examples here. So the one is mature, standardized operational processes contribute current efficiency levels despite aging infrastructure and high operating cost. If they want to make sure that that is correct and they want to continuously improve that, take the CMMI capability area, improving performance, and then analyze that. Look at opportunities like anticipating a surge in copper demand and in electric vehicles and renewable energy, and the corporation identify the needs to scale production. To scale production, for example, you can look at planning and managing the work. So how good are you at estimating, planning, monitoring the work, and being able to duplicate that process? Some of the other CMMI capability areas supports this objective also very well. Weaknesses, water scarcity risk is prompting a reassessment of resource planning, and contingency development is required. So CMMI's got a powerful managing business resilience capability area where you can look at your risk and opportunity management and your business continuity. And then if we look at threats, let's say community relations, potential risk to operational stability. So here you can have something like ensuring quality to make sure the organization abides by all the different rules, etc. There's other verification, validation that can come in there. So all of those capabilities can be used to support the Andes organization in the next step to make sure they've got the right capabilities to deliver on their organizational strategy here. So if I go to the next one, a balanced scorecard view of this. So if, say, one of the financial objectives is recognize that optimizing production cost and maximizing returns is vital to profitability, look at improving performance, look at managing business resilience. If you look at something like internal process, major focus during strategic planning was ensuring streamlined, safe, and sustainable operational processes. Then again, improving performance, and then sustaining habit and persistence. And there's actually a whole domain in CMMI domain that covers safety as well. So strong support for that strategic objective from CMMI. Just also, maybe at this point, if you start wondering where can you get access to consultants that can help you to guide you and do this mapping, at the CMMI Institute website, there's the partner directory. There's many leader appraisers, instructors, and consultants available all around the world that's got the knowledge and skills that can support you in that objective. So the other strategic planning tools, same thing, the business model canvas, the value chain analysis from Michael Porter. You can see if you look at them, there are very strong CMMI capabilities that map to all of these dimensions and can support you in your analysis, your strategic analysis for these. So at this point, what I'm going to do, Ron, I'm going to hand over to you. If you want to take it from here, then thank you, Ron.
Great, thank you, Pieter. Very good overview on those various tools for strategy and so forth. This has been very, very useful from my perspective alone already. So Pieter was talking about capabilities, and at the heart of what the CMMI does, it's in the title: capability, maturity, model for integration. And the I part on integration is specifically focused on being able to address almost any type of domain, any type of business, and improve their capability, and then measure their maturity against that. I guess I should go back a little bit. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ron Lear, Models and Frameworks Vice President here at CMMI Institute. I'm also a lead appraiser, high maturity lead appraiser. I have been working with the CMMI for close to 30 some years now, over 300 appraisals in organizations that you've been hearing about today, Boeing, Northrop Grumman, NASA, many, many others. And what my job here at CMMI is to basically take the feedback we're getting from you all in the community on how the model is working and improving the model. So we take a page from our own book and we constantly are putting out new releases. We're currently on version 3.0. And I'm a little teaser, I'm going to give you a little bit of a precursor on what's coming next, which is content around artificial intelligence. But we build this all around capability. This survey that you see on this slide, we conducted about 7 years ago, and we refreshed it this last December. And it supports a lot of what Pieter was just saying. When we polled organizations, if you start at the bottom here, because the bottom one really kind of resonates with me a lot around the strategy part. Senior management can come up with their strategy plans and so forth, but they don't necessarily then recognize that there's a capability that's dependent on the skills and experience and requirements for those future business needs. They may not have people to actually execute to those strategies. So they kind of limp along and do whatever they can. Again, as Pieter said, 41% of these organizations who responded are not tracking or monitoring progress against their documented plans and taking corrective actions. They don't have a pathway to get the additional job relevant skills available. They don't have a documented planning process that all the departments and projects follow. So again, this is why the CMMI came about, and this is what the CMMI has been doing. Let's go to the next slide, if you don't mind, Pieter. All right, this is just a quick snapshot for those of you not familiar with the CMMI. We refer to the CMMI in its entirety as the CMMI Performance Solution Ecosystem. The ecosystem itself has 5 primary components. Pieter has been talking about the model itself. The model is where we capture all of these best practices. It's where we organize them into capability areas, into domains, into practice areas, and so forth. They have built-in value statements for each practice area and each practice so that you know why, as an organization or project or a support function, why do I want to do this practice? Why do I want to implement this? It's built with an open architecture, so it can basically dovetail and in fact enables many other standards and frameworks like ISO, NIST, and we're working with several international organizations right now who want to leverage CMMI 3.0 to address some of their new requirements, including regulatory requirements. And then Pieter already pointed out the medical device discovery appraisal program. I was instrumental in helping to set that up in the early days of version 2.0. And CMMI was designed to do exactly that business model so that we could take it, tailor it very easily, and customize it to any type of business, any type of vertical, any type of industry. The second component is the appraisal method itself. Pieter alluded a little bit to that. We have an entire method around this, and all of these components are now designed, developed, and integrated together in an integrated product fashion. So training and certification is part of our credentialing program. We have systems and tools to support it. And in the past, we didn't have a whole lot of codified adoption guidance. Now we have tons of that. There's an adoption guide, there's an acquisition handbook, and all of these components go together to make the ecosystem, the heart of it being the model itself. Let's go to the next slide, please. All right, so every one of the practice areas and every one of the practices are organized using these practice group levels, and these tie directly into how you assess and then rate to either a capability or a maturity level. You have the option when you do an appraisal to do both. You can either do a capability level at the individual practice area level. So I might say, I'm going to pick the 17 core practice areas and then just hypothetical, I'm going to pick safety, security, and development. So I would look at those and I can get a rating, a capability rating that could be different for every one of those. Maturity levels are defined by the CMMI Institute based on feedback from the community as to predefined groups to say, our organization who is representing and demonstrating maturity level 3, in this case, the defined level you'll see here in the middle, it's showing that there are organizational process assets in place. It provides guidance across all the projects and programs and portfolios in the organization, and it gives a consistent way for how organizations take this set of best practices and use what is known worldwide as the gold standard for defining maturity, and it can be used and adopted by any industry. I've been to several external planning sessions for other models and frameworks. I'm a member of the US TAG Technical Advisory Group for ISO 9000, for example, and I also have been supporting the CMMC program here in the United States and participating in a lot of the NIST cybersecurity framework discussions. In the CSF discussions with NIST, I've heard a lot of these large banks that are saying, we love the cybersecurity framework from NIST. It's very simple and straightforward, but we don't really have a way to measure ourselves against it. So we use the CMMI maturity levels to assess where we are. So that was music to my ears when I heard that. Let's go to the next slide, please. So this is a snapshot of the entire set of model practice areas. This is a relatively new graphic in terms of we've added a few little code keys you can see here. So in the right graphic, you'll see at the bottom C and D representing core practice areas and then domain specific practice areas. So as you eyeball this chart, you can look through and say, for example, if I'm doing engineering and developing products in the upper left here, that includes product integration and technical solution. Those are both domain specific practice areas. Whereas some of the things that Pieter was talking about, for example, planning, managing work, estimating, and so forth, those are part of core. And so there are 17 core practice areas and there are 14 domain practice areas. And the beauty about the model, given that it's an open architecture, is you don't have to do a one size fits all. You can pick, think of it as like an a la carte menu. And you can use it to target those capabilities in your organization that really need to be improved. And it gives you a very methodical and evolutionary pathway to achieve that capability performance, but then also build and improve to increase your maturity and your performance levels. Let's go to the next slide, please. So as Pieter had talked about this already, and it's a very flexible and customizable approach. MDAP is a perfect example of that. CMMI covers a lot of what most organization needs, including, and again, here's a little bit of foreshadowing, what we found with these 8 domains that we now have in the model, it provides a very solid foundation for building effective, safe, and reliable AI capability within your organization. It connects well with other popular strategic planning tools and methods, as well as other standards and models. And it enables you to very quickly identify what your strengths and weaknesses are, and then it provides the solution to them. We have an arrangement with the United States General Administration Office, the GAO, and they're using CMMI. They're responsible for auditing and doing a lot of improvements across agencies in the United States federal government, both DoD and civilian. And they go in and audit a lot of these programs and their contractors. They're using CMMI to help them with those audits, but not just help them find where the issues are, but then provide feedback. And I've seen several of their audit reports. They're actually providing CMMI best practices back to those entities saying, okay, you have these 3 or 4 weaknesses in your capability. Here's options for you to solve them based on the CMMI best practices. So it helps you to put the strategy into action using proven improvement methods based on good capability. And it enables you to tweak and refine your strategy as you go using continuous improvement. And that one, I think, is really key. One of the things that a lot of models and standards have done in the past is focus heavily on compliance only. The problem with that is it becomes more rigid. It becomes much more focused on checking a box versus actually, let me innovate, let me improve. And one of the things we're hearing from the MDAP program participants is it's enabling them to make the changes and innovate on those medical device processes and products much faster, much more effectively, and in a way that actually helps those products work better for those patients. So we're really happy to see that. And that tracks with one of the goals that we had when we developed CMMI 2.0 and now 3.0. Next slide, please. All right, so we talked a little bit about this, but and we've got a Q&A question on this that I want to address. So this is a screenshot of our technical report. For every appraisal that's done and reported to the CMMI Institute, they are required to do what we call the performance report. It's a template that basically tracks objectives, business critical, strategic, and tactical business objectives that are important to that appraised organization. And it talks about the before and after picture. How are you doing against that objective before the appraisal, before your CMMI journey starts, and afterwards? The numbers, and this will answer that question that we have in the Q&A, the data that we have over the last 6 years, so from January 2019 through December 2024, these were 67,658 strategic and tactical objectives that those organizations being appraised self-reported to independently certified and trained CMMI appraisal teams against 19,221 approved appraisals. These are different organizations over that 6-year period. Each of them had different categories. They pick the category that's important to them. We do not mandate that. The CMMI doesn't mandate that. There are a handful of different subcategories. I'm going to show you some examples here in just a minute. You have the link here on the slide. So if you haven't seen this, I'd encourage you to read it. This to me is sort of at the heart of what CMMI is all about. And I don't know, for those of you who follow the PGA Tour and like golf and so forth, Titleist has been running some ads that I think really resonates with me. And the tagline is the ad is, when there's excellence in process, there's excellence in performance. That is the heart of what CMMI does. And that goes true for approaching anything that an organization wants to tackle, including this topic, which is around strategic execution and addressing that strategic gap that Pieter very, very well covered. Let's go to the next slide, please. All right, so this is just a highlight. I'm not going to go through these in detail. These are the categories that you see here on the left. So we broke it into things like technical performance, productivity performance, quality performance, operational performance, et cetera. And there are subcategories that the organization can pick. So for example, on-time delivery is up 18% across the board. Schedule variance is down 15%. So people are hitting their targets when they schedule those targets. Overall productivity up 24%. Defect density down by an average of 26%. Customer satisfaction up by 18%. And project and solution productivity up 20%. So takeaways: proven effective approach for building better innovation and performance and transforming your organization. Pieter very well and succinctly talked about this whole focus that CMMI has on persistence habit. Persistence and habit is key to making sure that the performance improvement and the capabilities stick, that they last after the appraisal, that it becomes how the business works. And it's a very flexible approach. It can be tailored to any different customer and requirement. If you go and read the report, you'll see that this is covering a lot of different industries. Let's go to the next slide and I'll give you a quick teaser on that one too. So one of the myths that we've had in the past with CMMI is that it only works in large businesses. Actually, it's quite the opposite. What we're seeing, again, over the 6 years is upwards of 89%, nearly 90%, were with less than 100 FTEs. It's still being used by large organizations, as you can see, but that's the minority versus the majority. And a lot of those large organizations are broken into smaller entities, and they use it as well. I'll give you an example. One of a company that you probably recognize, Northrop Grumman, they have 14 different sites that are CMMI appraised currently. And those are not necessarily large. Some of them are fairly small organizations that they've had over time. So again, CMMI can fit any size of organization. Next slide, if you would please, Pieter. And coming soon to talk a little bit more about this is the wave that we're seeing now across, and it's affecting almost every business and industry in the world right now, is on artificial intelligence. So about a year plus ago, we kicked off a working group to actually start developing content that's going to go into the CMMI in this next release. I'm not going to go through all these numbers. You can see some of them. I'll highlight just a couple items here. We have 200 pages of new content that we've reviewed now. It impacts all 31 practice areas. So there's going to be new AI content in all 31 practice areas. And of the 276 total practices in the model, almost half of them will have new AI content. And we've done it in a way that it'll tie in how these other capabilities that you may have in an organization will work. So again, very flexible, very easy, and it gives you a lot of different options to approach. One last thing on this slide is to point out that IBM joined us when we first kicked this off, and they are now one of the lead sponsoring artificial intelligence working group sponsoring organizations, and they're participating with the reviews and so forth as well. So we're very excited about that relationship and some of the things that we can do from that. Let's go to the next slide, please. And these are some of the themes that we saw for AI. Some of this might resonate with some of you. Generally speaking, governance activities play a very critical role in any AI implementation. That's kind of the big takeaway from the start. From there, organizations are using it in three basic ways. One is autonomous augmentation. They're using AI solely to perform specific governance tasks, such as policy by code. So you enforce your policies through software code, and it prohibits you from doing anything other than what the policy says. And anything that violates it are automatically rejected. Verified augmentation. This is where there's a human in the loop and they intervene and they verify the accuracy of the AI decisions or actions. And I'm using governance here as just an example. There are many more in the AI content, but this is specifically focused on giving you an example with governance. So there's a verifiable step in there with the human in the loop. And then support augmentation. The vast majority of organizations are doing something that's a blend of all three of these, which are humans using AI to assist management with governance activities, giving key information needs, business objectives, research, conducting trend analysis, and so forth. So again, and this last one, monitoring compliance and direction with key organizational directives, including those strategic directives. So just a teaser on what's coming. Pieter, I think that was it for me. Let's hand it back over to you and you can take us home. Oh, one more. Senior management should emphasize, this is a real key one here, of particular importance, addressing holistically and from end to end the idea of data debt, process debt, and technical debt. Otherwise, like Pieter has been talking about from the very beginning, AI becomes another failed promise and strategic initiative. So those are some key focuses, and CMMI will give you the answers on how you can address all three of those. And it gives you very specific actions that senior management must take to drive this data-driven culture and focus on critical AI challenges, such as privacy, silos, misuse, and so forth. I think that was my last slide there. Pieter, sorry about that. Over to you now.
That was Ron. Okay, no, that was awesome. Thank you, Ron. I think so. In doing the research on the strategy execution gap, what we see, Gartner recently also reported up to 30% of AI initiatives fail early on, and it's mostly related to data quality issues, where CMMI also has got very strong support for data management and data quality. And I think just the numbers, it's clear, it speaks for itself. The model is very effective to achieve your business objectives, however you define that. So the point now is so we've got the strategic plan. If we just run through this again, so the strategic plan is done, and we've mapped our capabilities, the CMMI, or identify the key capabilities required, and map the CMMI to those capabilities. So the next step is for the scoping and planning of the appraisal. Ron mentioned the appraisal part of the model, and so the next step is actually to do the appraisal planning. So the lead appraiser will sit with you and then identify what processes, projects, work units, participants, etc., departments are needed to actually do the appraisal to understand how well you are performing in your organization against those capabilities. And this is a really straightforward process. The planning takes about a month, and then it can be a little bit longer. The actual execution of that appraisal is about a week. It can be longer depending on scope. But out of that appraisal then, and just the impact of those appraisals are very low on the organizations. They are highly efficient to run these appraisals. So out of that comes your areas of strength. So what are you doing very well better than best practice defined within CMMI, and what are your improvement opportunities against the practices identified within the CMMI. And then comes the next step, which is actually the more important and difficult part, where you have to now implement your improvements. So you have to take the improvements from the appraisal, prioritize them. You can't do all of them. You have to pick the key ones. Typically, your improvement cycles could be a month to 3 months. Prioritize those improvements, then get your group of people together to actually look at your current processes and either update them or enhance them or rewrite them. During that process definition phase, you're also going to look at things like what resources do you need, what skills do you need. You're going to look at how you're going to measure that process. So you're going to then define the process that's required to close the gap. And at that point, you're going to deploy the process. The deployment of the process goes with things like training. You're going to collect measurements, and a key thing that you need here, which I've seen, if it's not in place, then processes is not getting institutionalized, is your process quality assurance. That team comes and they look at that process that's being implemented or have been implemented, and they look at how well you're performing this process within your organization. And they should not be the process police to force things. They are there to really understand what is working and what is not working. And why is the process not followed? Is it a lack of training? Is the process still broken? Is there technology issues? They feed that back into the improvement loop. And then from there, it basically gets implemented and fixed. Also, there could be resistance to change. So they feed back to senior management as well. So senior management know how well this process is getting implemented. So PQA plays a critical role to make sure that there's trust in this process, the fidelity of the process is good. And at this point, you just go into a continuous improvement cycle where you're going to collect information. It's going to go into the list of things to improve, and you just go through this continuous improvement cycle, continuously building your capability. And I like what Ron was saying, when there's excellence in process, there's excellence in performance, and this is exactly it. So the process performance determines the capability, and this is what you want to implement. So you're going from strategy to identifying the capabilities, what are the processes that drives the capabilities, and then you improve that, and that's how you execute your strategy. And so then finally, what we're looking at then also, if we say who owns this, so typically you find in software development companies, you've got an engineering process group or lead that owns the process definition process. In project management organizations, you've got a PMO that leads it. Medical device manufacturers, it's quality director that typically owns it. And what we're recommending strongly here is that organizations that are taking the strategic angle of this must make the chief strategy officer responsible for this process. The chief strategy officer needs to run this process and get this capability implemented or the strategic execution done. So there's also a lot of tools, and we're running out of time, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but you have to define your own process for implementing process. There's a lot of tools that you can leverage, like Six Sigma, the MAIG, Software Engineering Institute's Ideal, Demix, PDCA, etc. Okay, then the key thing, Ron also mentioned it, is the change management thing. Just briefly want to mention this is a critical role. Senior management leadership has to play this role. You need vision, skills, incentive, resources, action plan, change to get change. If you don't have any of those, so you don't have vision, you get confusion. If you don't have skills, you get anxiety. If you don't have incentives, gradual change, no resources, frustration, no action plan, and a false start. Also, there's a lot of research on that and models like the Kotter model. I've used this model as well. Very effective in helping you to effect change, This is also where your executive coaches play a key role to help organizations with the change management. So in summary, what we say is you do your strategic plan, organizations are doing it well, there's failure in execution. Take your CMMI model, map the capabilities to that. There's a lot of expertise that can help you with that. It also maps to widely known tools, plan, scope the appraisal, and then run the appraisal. It's a low impact, relatively quick exercise. And then you follow your process for implementing your own process or getting your strategy implemented, which is your strategy execution gap closure process. And then you learn from this process. Ron also made that point. CMMI is also a continuous improvement process model, very, very strong on continuous improvement. And that continuously builds strength within your organization and strengthen your strategic capabilities. And like we say, leadership is very important in terms of affecting that change. We need leadership. So what's next? You can go to the CMMI Institute partner directly again and get access to all the CMMI leader prizes out there, all the partners in the world that's providing CMMI services, instructors, leader prizes. You're welcome to contact the Demix team. We'll provide a free consultation to get started. We can give you the model that Ron showed you also. We can give you a free copy of the model at a glance, at a high level. You can contact me, you can contact Melanie, you can contact Bianca, or you can visit the CMMI website for more information. Contact Ron, contact Lindsay, or you can visit the Demix website. So I think, Melanie, with that, I'm going to hand over to you then again.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So we have about 5 minutes left. So let's start with just the one question on slide 5 that we have there is in carrying out step number 3, what change management initiatives are imperative?
Step number 3, change. Yeah, that's critical. No, it's absolutely fundamental. You have to do that. Change management. There's 2 things that's required here. The one is you see there's a weakness in the capability to actually implement capability. So that's where there's a failure. If you look at the research, a lot of that. If we distribute the slides, there's some supplementary material that shows that. Then you need the fundamental requirement is the leadership change. So leadership needs to affect the change and help drive the change. Absolutely fundamental. Ron also mentioned that there is also in CMMI practices that can help leadership, but at the end of the day, leadership needs to make this happen.
Great. Thank you. And then we have a question directed to Ron. So it says, hi, Ron, what steps being taken to ensure best practices to deploy and monitor the use of AI in the organization? And how are AI technologies selected so they can contribute to improving performance and optimizing processes?
Thank you for that question, Nigel. So I'm going to give you a 2-part answer to your 2-part question here. So there are multiple practices and practice areas in the model that will help you both in the deployment side, how you're going to deploy it, how you're going to plan the deployment, and then how you're going to monitor it. Pieter talked about several of those. Monitor and control is one of the practice areas that will give you the ability to do the monitoring piece. The deployment piece can come into different places in the model, depending on whether you're talking about development, security, safety services, et cetera. And then how our AI technology is selected. We have an entire practice area called decision analysis and resolution that will enable the organization to take very clearly and identify and codify what are the weightings, the criteria that they use for making key decisions, and then measuring their result against those decisions to see if they're actually achieving the goals that they set for them. DAR, as we call it, is one of those very useful. I've seen organizations put it in code notes where a software programmer is coding. They can code it one of 3 ways. So they this one organization I work with popped up a little DAR coding matrix that they plopped in and said, I coded it this way because this is why we are doing it, because of this coding standard or this other reason. So then 2-3 years hence, when they're going in and modifying the code, they actually have a record to go back and say, okay, those assumptions, those decision points are still valid, or now they've changed, so we can decide we need to go a different direction. So DAR does a lot to help you. There are lots of other practices in the model that help you around choosing and deploying AI technologies. So, you know, when you're thinking about how AI can be taken care of during your CMMI implementation, it's going to be woven into the very fabric of the model. So Pieter talked about it. Lay out your improvement objectives, lay out your process improvement plan, what you're going to do, and you can roll the AI pieces directly into that. And you may end up using AI in one of those augmentation phases or approaches that I mentioned to actually address some of the process improvements that you want to make. You might have AI doing some things around QA audits, for example. I know a lot of organizations are looking at AI augmented quality assurance. So it really depends on what your goals are for your organization. CMMI will give you the breadcrumbs to build those capabilities where it's important for your organization. And it's not one size fits all. It's a what's important for your business, as Pieter very well said.
And I think that actually answered the next question that we had on how AI can be taken care during CMMI implementation. So I think
one other quick little response on that. In addition to the new content, the team has also worked on 4 crosswalks with other standards. So those of you familiar with ISO 42001 is the standard around artificial intelligence management systems. We're going to have an entire crosswalk. It's bi-directional. So it goes from that standard to the CMMI and CMMI back to that standard. And then we're also creating what we're calling a quick start guide. Those of you who purchase and have a mobile phone have seen quick start guides. I have an iPhone, and when you get your iPhone, there's no longer a manual with it. It gives you a 2 or 3 page little document to say, here's how to set up your phone, transfer your old phone information over, and you're good to go. So the quick start guides are designed to do that, to say, how can I quickly ramp up with AI and CMMI to start addressing the key things I need in an organization? That's all new content coming. It's going to be coming later this year and into 2026.
perfect. Very, very excited. Okay, good. So I think we've come to the end. We just want to thank everyone again for joining, and we just want to say again, we will release the recording as well as the slide deck. There is some more supporting information lower down in the deck that we didn't cover that you can look at during your own time. So yes, thank you very much, and you're welcome to contact us, any of us. Thank you, everyone. Have a good.
Thanks, Melanie, Pieter, and Bianca. Very well done. Thanks, Lindsay. Thank you all for participating.
Bye bye. Bye bye.